For 10 years, Jeremy Wade hunted river monsters for television. Across 6 continents, millions watched him fight deadly fish. However, he is finally revealing the real reason the show ended at the age of 69. Running out of monsters wasn't the only issue. He turned off offers of music, millions of dollars, concealed private situations from producers, and made a startling revelation concerning the condition of the rivers themselves. He was encouraged to fabricate things by the network. Wade declined. You'll be shocked by what he tells you about the show's last days. On March 23, 1956, Jeremy Wade was born in Aldershot, a sleepy Hampshire town where Britain was still recovering from the war. At home, things were stable. His mother maintained orderly routines in the home while his father, an architect, produced plans. Nothing odd, nothing wild. Aldershot itself was gradually transforming from its former garrison background into something more residential and gentler. The topic of rationing was still discussed. The majority of households were cautious. Furthermore, the Wad's music was identical. Simple holidays, church, and school. You would never have guessed that a future river hunter was growing up in such peaceful home since everything was so under control. However, something sparked early music. Jeremy was only 5 years old when it occurred. In 1961, he packed a small rod made out of thread and garden canes for his family's enjoyment when they visited the riverway. He put bread on the hook and hoped, even if it seemed absurd. The line tugged after a few attempts. It broke the surface with a tiny perch, music. Something inside him was ignited by that brief instant. Every weekend, he pleaded to fish, music. He brought the heads of dried fish to school. His odd fixation was seen by his teachers. He hunted shadows by pressing his face against stream water as other lads kicked footballs. It was incomprehensible to everyone. Not quite yet. The ensuing summers were spent in streams and ponds. He sketched everything he came across while exploring the 1960s countryside by himself with a notebook in his arm. Because he came to the library so frequently, sometimes 5 times a week, the staff started addressing him by name. He made hand copies of diagrams. Music, even before he was 7, he was labeling species with actual taxonomy. He meticulously drew fish, insects, music, and even frogs in his journals. Everything was measured and recorded. He watched life in the water for hours while crouching close to muddy margins. His thinking was influenced by these little moments. He learned to slow down from them. He learned from them to pay attention to what others overlooked. Then a terrifying incident occurred. He investigated a local tale of a huge eel hidden in a muddy stream in 1966, when he was around 10 years old. He desired to witness it firsthand. He slipped in his haste. The water closed over his head as the heavy sludge pulled him below. When a bystander noticed him and pulled him free, he struggled to get out but instead sank deeper, music. He was silent, trembling, and soaking when he got home. His family went into a frenzy. They forbade him from going exploring by himself. However, the fear just made him more determined. He started going out covertly at night. He traveled the entire river with a small net, his notebook, and an unwavering desire to comprehend music. He discovered something that seemed like treasure a year after his family relocated to Iping. When its owner retired, the ancient tackle shop was abandoned to decay. Shelves were collapsing and there was dust everywhere, yet the drawers contained wooden rods, hooks, and lines. It turned into his covert workshop. He borrowed old equipment, slid in via a loose back panel each night, and fished silently until dawn. After waiting for hours, he finally caught a 2-pound bug one evening. He took 3 measurements. In his book, he wrote every detail. It felt like a medal, that catch. Night after night, he continued to return music, trying out fresh tricks and baits. He proudly guarded the location, which he turned into his own laboratory. He brought all that river life with him to Uppingham School in 1968. The majority of students desired athletics. Jeremy's preference was biology. He became a member of the school's biology club and converted vacant classrooms into tiny laboratories stocked with specimens, jars, and sketches. He took his music, pals through the process of dissecting fish that he had personally caught. Because he always knew when fish were spawning or how they traveled in different seasons, they began to refer to him as the fish whisperer. Teachers commended him for accuracy well above his years when he began writing brief papers on river ecology at the age of 16. He would frequently miss music, sports practice in favor of studying fish anatomy by himself at his workstation. Then, in 1970, there was a vacation to Scotland. Jeremy saw more untamed water on the family's trip to the Highlands than he had at home. By the end of the day, he had caught his first music salmon after quietly practicing with a fly fishing book he got from a local angler. It might have been a medal. The majority of fishermen would have boasted. After holding the fish for a while, Jeremy let it go. That little deed revealed who he was becoming, even while his family gazed in shock. From then on, his appreciation for nature expanded. Music. It marked the start of the conservation philosophy that will influence his entire life. Something more difficult happened at home. His father, music, encouraged him to pursue engineering as a secure career. Zoology was what Jeremy wanted. Dinner tables were crowded with arguments. His father discussed job security. When Jeremy researched fish and rivers, he talked about how they made the earth feel alive. He had piles of doodles and biology notes by the time he was 16. He was determined not to abandon his dream. It made things tense, but it made him stronger. He discovered that pursuing your passion frequently meant being by yourself. Then another terrifying incident occurred. He went fishing by himself on the Norfolk Broads at the age of 16 for his biology club. Suddenly, a storm struck. The boat capsized. He was devoured by the icy water. Nevertheless, he clung to his catch bag and battled the current for more than 2 miles before coming ashore. He was wet, trembling, and tired. Music, he learned how harsh water can be from that near miss. It encouraged him to acquire survival skills as well. He studied first aid. He taught himself to remain composed under pressure. He survived on the rivers he investigated for his show thanks to those teachings years later. He had made a monster list by the time he graduated from college in 1974. Names such as Meong huge catfish, arapaima, and Goliath tigerfish. He had circled them in red after copying them from National Geographic publications. These weren't merely fantastical animals. He viewed them as his life's road map. He made a self-promise to search the world for those creatures as his friends got ready for regular jobs. From such teenage notebooks, several of them later made an appearance on River Monsters. In 1974, he enrolled in the University of Kent to study biology and music. He studied the ecology of freshwater. The migration patterns of the enormous European catfish, which can reach lengths of over 3 meters and weights of over 130 kilograms, were the subject of his senior thesis. He spent nights in the filthy water of the river's tributaries in order to examine them. His research was solid, but he took music chances that other students shied away from. He was commended by professors. Music, on the riverbank, they observed a fearless biologist who learned best. He worked at the aquarium at Bristol Zoo during the summers. He picked up the skill of hand-feeding piranhas there. A coworker once slipped and dropped a hand into the tank. His finger was bitten by the piranhas. The water was full with blood. Then there was chaos. Jeremy remained calm. He watched. He did some studying. He was captivated with dangerous fish. He discussed with employees why they were feared. His subsequent job as a television teacher was shaped by his notion that anxiety stemmed from miscommunication. He spent a semester studying in India in 1976, concentrating on the Ganges River's ecology. The river was simultaneously stunning and perilous. Sewage and industrial waste were conveyed by its water. He developed acute diarrhea, a high fever, vomiting, and dehydration after sampling fish. Weak and scared, he stayed in the hospital for almost 3 weeks. His perspective on tropical rivers was altered by this near-death experience. The giants and mysteries of rivers like the Ganges and the Amazon drew him in after that. He also taught fishing to disadvantaged children in Canterbury while he was a student. In order to get their attention, he mixed science with excitement by telling them tales of mankind eating fish. The children adored it. They wanted more. Jeremy came to the conclusion that stories might teach people more about animals than any textbook. It served as a foreshadowing of his future. He turned down offers of quiet lab work after earning his degree in zoology in 1978. Instead, he opted for adventure. Music, he was a self-employed guide in East Anglia's rivers. He became well known in the area for his patience and expertise after catching tench that broke records. He was described as a rising angler in regional papers. This daring route served as his gateway to the world he had imagined as a little boy. Long before anyone knew his identity, Jeremy Waite entered his dangerous life by standing by the river with a makeshift fishing pole. He accepted a menial teaching position in Hungary immediately after earning his degree in biology in 1978 since it was the only way he could support his fishing mania. He kept getting drawn in by the Danube River. He was restless because of its lengthy tales, its ancient mysteries, and most notably the fabled Welsh catfish. He, Music, slipped out in the dark despite the fact that night fishing was prohibited by communist regulations. He waited for something enormous to break the surface while sitting by himself on the ice banks of a river that was almost freezing. Music, everything caught up with him one night in 1979. After locals saw him, they accused him of interfering with wildlife illegally and imprisoned him for a full day in a Soviet-style cell. Music. For years, he was plagued by the chilly walls, the quiet, and the terror. But something hardened within him. He was driven toward wilder locations by that early run-in with authorities. Music, he made his first independent trip to India in 1981, using all of his savings. Rumors of the Gooch catfish circulated among those living close to the Key River. It dragged them into the water, they said. They claimed that it, Music, lurked close to graveyards where bodies were washed downstream. Wade was eager to see the reality. He hooked a gooch that weighed about 100 pounds one day. He had a brief surge of triumph. Then, as Wade struggled to remain upright, a mugger crocodile swung in and ripped the fish away. They tore open his arms. He tried to cure the wounds for weeks after they became contaminated by river water. Nevertheless, he came back and grabbed a 161-pound gooch, which was 3 times larger than most. That moment demonstrated the veracity of the old tales. Music, he traveled the Amazon and wrote for Trout and Salmon magazine from 1982 to 1985. He pursued Arapima in Brazil in 1984, but the mosquitoes, Music, drove him back. A single bite escalated into numerous ones, which in turn led to malaria. The fever struck quickly. He trembled till he lost control of his equipment. He had vivid visions of enormous fish sprinting through the trees. He was hauled to safety by nearby locals. They used basic cures and extracts from vines to treat him, but modern medicine had to win the battle. Music, 3 months later, he remained there. Malaria, he claimed, was as terrifying, Music, as encountering any wild predator. He wrote a book titled Third World Fishing in 1989 after witnessing enough peril to last a lifetime. What he described stunned people. While attempting to document the facts, he had managed to elude armed poachers in the Meong Delta. He has seen officials disregard everything while endangered species were snatched for pennies. One of the book's most talked about scenes was his escape from one gang of smugglers. Every page made readers feel his terror. His candor gained him recognition in environmental circles and led him unexpected opportunities. He made an appearance on the BBC radio in 1991. He stumbled into a story of a piranha assault on a diver in Brazil when he was supposed to be speaking quietly about fish migration. That spontaneous moment quickly gained traction. His voice sounded so real that people continued playing it again and over. HarperCollins soon extended print opportunities to him. WDE's Music, first-hand experiences gave the discussion significant weight, and the story also encouraged scientists to re-examine ancient piranha myths. He became well known as a nature storyteller after that one show. He filmed Music, Jungle Hooks, a pilot in Guyana, 1 year later, in 1992. From the beginning, everything felt extreme. His career high point was landing a music 200 pounds peacock bass, but the festivities were cut short when a crew member was bitten by a poisonous snake. The only choice was to evacuate by helicopter. Equipment was destroyed by storms. They felt like they were up against the jungle itself. The stories from that shoot proved popular among adventure fans, but the pilot was never developed into a complete series. Music, people discussed how Wade maintained his composure in the face of chaos. He collaborated with David Attenborough's group on an Arctic Char 4, Music, Life in the Freezer part in 1994. He declined the team's offer of a full-time position because they valued his expertise. Staged wildlife scenes were not what he wanted. He liked the unpredictability and mess of actual exploration. Nevertheless, his collaborations with them broadened, music, his horizons and served as a reminder to others that truth was more important to him than well-produced TV. He was heavily involved in Congo excursions by 1997. Days of avoiding rebel checkpoints, music, and encountering armed soldiers were detailed in his writings in the Field magazine. On one of these excursions, he captured a record-breaking 45-kilogram Goliath tigerfish. The length of the creature was 5 feet. It has teeth as big as a great white. Because even a slight slip could rip through muscle and skin, he kept it at arm's length. When Wade saw those jaws up close, he saw why the locals were afraid of it. His experiences in the Congo influenced many of his later television concepts. Then 2008 arrived. He presented river monsters to Animal Planet after being turned down for years. He filmed a raw demo reel in the Congo by himself and showed it to them. There are no plans or scripts, just actual risk. Lightning nearly got electrocuted in one scene after cracking so close. The executives answered yes after silently observing. WDE's life changed after the show was approved. He returned to Guyana for the first season in 2009. He slept very little during the 3 exhausting weeks he spent hunting the gigantic devil catfish. The 150-pound monster he eventually hooked fought so fiercely that his shoulder snapped out of place. He requested, music, they maintain the video even though the crew wanted to cut it. The true demands of the job were demonstrated by actual agony. Deep in the Amazon, he looked for the vampire fish Parara in Season 2 of 2010. He was repeatedly bitten while strolling through shallows covered in piranha. He continued even though the cuts required stitches. He utilized the event to inform, music, listeners that piranhas were only hazardous in specific situations. The audience was affected by that moment's honesty. Season 3 in 2011 put more pressure on him. In Texas, he faced up against a 300-pound alligator gar. He was nearly pulled underneath by the fish. For a moment, he was truly afraid. He acknowledged it on camera when production stopped. People's perceptions of him changed after that little admission. Yes, strong, but also human. The program was a worldwide success by 2012. He was reminded of the guatfish by the India episode. The locals referred to it as a man-eater. Stories from survivors stuck with you. Wade chose respect over awards as he snagged a 200 bigouche and let it go. The episode was one of the series' most potent moments because of its blend, music, of science, folklore, and moral decision. In 2013, when deep in the Congo, Jeremy Wade was reminded of the untamed nature of the river. The fangs of the Goliath tigerfish he had just hoisted onto the boat resembled knives. He briefly believed he was in control of the situation. The fish then swung around and sprang forward. He felt the anguish pierce his bones as its jaws slammed shut on his hand. The team halted for a moment as small trails of blood flowed down his fingers. Antibiotics had to be flown in from a nearby city because of the deep puncture wounds, music, and the genuine risk of infection. The sound of rebel gunfire echoed through the trees as all of this was taking place. The entire river seemed to be holding its breath. Because of the fish in front of him and the chaos all around him, it was one of the few times he realized how close danger was on both sides, which is why the episode stuck in his memory. He discovered just a year later that power, even when it originates from something that is not attempting to harm, may cause pain. Music, in 2014, while filming an Arapima episode in Brazil, an 80-pound fish attacked his chest with its whipping tail. It felt as though someone had rammed a steering column into him. He found out later that his ribs were cracked. Production was halted for 2 weeks after doctors warned that internal bleeding might occur. He made an effort to continue working, though, because he thought the story was more important than the suffering. The video demonstrated the arapima's full might and the potential danger of these enormous freshwater animals. Then, in 2015, Mongolia arrived, and the cold drove him to the brink. His body began to tremble as he stood in a cold river looking for a moment. He soon lost his ability to think rationally. He was so quickly overcome by hypothermia that he started having hallucinations. After a short while, he passed out from exhaustion. Music. After removing him, the crew revived him by performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation. He later claimed that since his initial fight with malaria many years prior, he had not experienced that level of terror. It demonstrated how the actual monster may even be the surroundings. He caught a 400-pound bull shark in Papua New Guinea in 2016. He felt conflicted between upholding local traditions and safeguarding the species, so he wanted to release it in response to growing anti-shark finning demonstrations. His choice was viewed differently by the townspeople. He was accused by some of disregarding tradition. Others supported his decision. The incident demonstrated how fishing has more cultural risks than just physical ones. It poses difficult questions that don't always have simple answers and bears moral weight. In Suriname the same year, the threat came from the sky rather than the water or wildlife. A cameraman was struck by lightning when a storm passed over the region. Music, he was momentarily immobilized by the shock, and everyone hurried to assist him. Everything was made more difficult by the isolated setting. Wade then claimed that he remained silent about the incident out of concern that if the story got out too widely, the show may be cancelled. Although the cameraman made a full recovery, the incident served as a reminder of how erratic nature can be. By 2017, Wade was dealing with an unexpected issue. His list of monsters was nearly bare. He has been traveling across countries for almost 10 years, pursuing animals like the Goliath tigerfish and the para. Each episode was watched by nearly 2 million people, but he sensed the end was near. There were very few unusual species left, and the majority were not known to be in much danger. He didn't want to inflate myths or produce phony excitement. He was honest with producers. The rarity of real monsters made them realize that the show had reached its natural end. He witnessed a river perish in front of him when in Zambia that same year. A portion of the Zambesi had been poisoned by illegal gold mining, and dead tiger fish drifted by. The water turned hazy and had an odd fragrance. Hundreds of fish had been killed by toxic substances like mercury that had contaminated the river. That day, he refused to concentrate on a monster hunt. Rather, he documented the devastation to show the world, how quickly an ecology can be destroyed by greed. It turned into one of his most impactful episodes to date. When networks pushed for CGI monsters to revive the series, the demand only increased. They wanted him to pursue imaginary monsters. He declined. He told them about the incident in Peru when a boat carrying his crew was cut loose in the middle of the river due to sabotage. That day, they nearly perished. He informed producers that the show's success was due to its authenticity. The essence of the show would be lost if they introduced artificial threats or computer creatures. Instead of damaging the series' integrity, this conflict forced the team to discontinue it. He recorded his final major hunt in Venezuela later that year. The last creature on his list, the para, was captured by him. He became ill with dengue fever shortly after filming, and the symptoms were severe. Profound exhaustion, muscle soreness, and a high fever. He recuperated for several months. That moment marked the conclusion of the show, but it wasn't until later that the whole cost of his trips was revealed. He was offered $1 million for a spin-off series immediately following the finale. He declined it. He claimed that the story was done and that he didn't want to add more to something that was already finished. Fans questioned why he didn't do interviews for a time, but the answer was straightforward. Honesty was more important to him than fame. He went back to the Myong in 2019 with Mighty Rivers. He dissected a fish and extracted microelastics from music it's got during a live broadcast. Tiny fragments that are barely bigger than sand grains. They were present in more than 90% of the fish in the area. Viewers were appalled by the image as the river carried untreated trash directly into the food chain. At last, local authorities acknowledged the extent of the pollution. By 2020, he was candid about the damage to his own body. Since 1990, he had been afflicted with malaria, music, multiple times. His liver was harmed by each infection. His liver function had declined, according to the doctors, and they cautioned him that one more serious illness may be fatal. The worn-out evenings, recurrent fevers, and weeks when he was barely able to stand were not depicted in the rough picture that people saw on television. He was shocked by the shift when he returned to the Amazon for dark waters in 2021. In certain locations, over 80% of the species he had captured on camera for river monsters had disappeared. The river had been depleted by hunting and illegal mining. He challenged poachers who acknowledged selling rare fish abroad for exorbitant prices. Some sections of the river appeared deserted and lifeless. According to data he provided, the number of megafish has decreased by about 50% in just 5 years. He was assisting UN conservation panels 2 years later. Over 50% of freshwater fish species were in danger of going extinct. The Amazon, the Congo, and the Myanmar were losing their apex predators. He turned down a Netflix biopic offer once more. A Hollywood portrayal of his life was not what he desired. Music, he desired movement. He continued to advance by 2025. Even yet, mobility was uncomfortable due to arthritis. At the age of 69, Music taught new fishermen ethical fishing through online classes. He advised them not to pursue fame and to respect waterways. Because he spoke from experience rather than tales written in safe chambers, his voice had musical weight. He made a shocking statement during an interview the same year. Rivers perished before monsters ran out, he claimed. Despite its simplicity, the line contained years' worth of truth. According to his logs, since 2009, river flows have decreased by 30%. Music. Large portions of the Myanmar and Amazon had dried up. He was informed by local fishermen that some species had not been spotted for years. He cautioned that many river systems would collapse by 2030 if immediate action is not taken. His impact kept growing. He established the Wade Angling Trust in 2022 with the goal of protecting and cleaning waterways. Music, the Ganges was the subject of their first endeavor. Over 10 tons of garbage were removed in less than a month. In India, the before and after photos generated national discussion after becoming viral online. The trust grew to collaborate with other conservation organizations, awareness increased, and enforcement improved. Then came a narrative about which he remained silent for years. A hippo attacked him close to a distant tributary in 2018 while he was on a private Congo adventure. The beast struck him so forcefully that he broke his leg as he clambered up a muddy slope. He stayed in the jungle by himself for 2 nights, without eating. He waited for assistance while making his own splint. It wasn't until 2025 that he told the story. Because it demonstrated how close he had come to being extinct in a river he loved, the event stuck with him. His private life stayed modest and uncomplicated. Between 2000 and 2020, he lived alone in rural England and traveled more than 250 days a year. He claimed to have no regrets despite missing out on typical life experiences. He found meaning in the river, and he followed it wherever it took him. He is currently working on a memoir for 2026. Music, he claims to uncover forgotten tales, unique images, and possibly extinct animals. He reiterates his warning that if nothing is done, certain rivers would completely collapse by 2030. The book is intended to be more than just a collection of recollections. It is a last appeal to save the watery environments that molded him.